Great, this meeting is being recorded. So I would like to call this meeting to order. This is the Executive Committee on Friday, July 19. And I'm going to ask our interpreter to start by introducing herself and walking through how to access our interpretation services.
Okay.
Ruth?
Good morning. This is Ruth, and I am the interpreter. I will provide the instructions for interpretation into English. Please scroll to the bottom of the Zoom screen where the meeting controls are. Click on the interpretation icon, the little world, and select English as your language. If you are joining through the Zoom mobile app, a cell phone, tablet, etc., please press the ellipses, then interpretation, and then choose your language. Finally, click on mute original audio to not hear the original Spanish in the background. I will now give the instructions in Spanish. Buenos días, mi nombre es Ruth, soy la intérprete. Para hacer uso del servicio de interpretación, por favor desplácese a la parte inferior de la pantalla de Zoom, donde aparecen los controles. Haga clic en el icono de interpretación, que es el globo terráqueo, y seleccione Spanish, que es español. Si está utilizando la aplicación móvil de Zoom en un celular, tableta, etc., presione los puntos suspensivos, luego interpretación y luego el idioma. Si no desea escuchar el audio original en inglés en el fondo, por favor seleccione Mute Original Audio, o sea, silenciar el audio original. Gracias. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that. I would like to invite you to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag, the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so next we have our approval of meeting minutes. So do we have any public comments on this, Francesca?
No, Chair, no hands from the public.
Okay, do we have any board comments? I don't see anybody popping up. So I would entertain a motion on the meeting minutes.
Move approval.
Thank you.
Second, Sotelo Solis.
Thank you. So we have a motion and a second.
Thank you, Chair. For the City of San Diego, Councilmember Von Wilpert.
Oh, yes.
Thank you. For the County of San Diego, Supervisor Lawson Reamer.
Yes.
Thank you. For East County, Mayor Vasquez.
Yes.
Thank you. For North County Coastal, Chair Blakespear.
Yes.
Thank you. For North County Inland, Mayor Voss.
Aye.
Thank you. And for South County, Second Vice Chair Sotelo Solis.
Sotelo Solis, aye.
Thank you very much. And that does pass unanimously.
Thank you. And I would like to welcome our council member Von Wilpert here for her very first SANDAG Executive Committee meeting. So welcome. We're happy to have you. The opportunity to fill in at SANDAG is always a fun chance. So
Thank
welcome.
you very much. Yep, excited to be here.
Okay, so now we have our next item, which is non-agenda public comments. Do we have any?
No, Chair, I don't see any hands.
Okay, do we have any board comments? Not seeing anybody popping up to speak on that. Okay, so we will move to, I'm going to pull item number 4 forward. So, and then we'll continue with our draft agendas and our legislative report after that. So item number 4 is our executive director's performance evaluation and fiscal year 2022 performance objectives. So last June, the board of directors approved a set of goals for Hassan for fiscal year 2021. For reference, these are included as attachment 3. And Hassan has provided a letter to the board, which is included as attachment 2, which describes his accomplishments in the past 12 months. So Hassan, before the executive committee begins their discussion, would you like to provide any remarks?
Sure. Thank you, Chair Blakespear. Good morning to all of you executive committee members. I would like to start by saying it's been a remarkable year for SANDAG. As you review the letter I prepared, I hope you feel as proud as I do for all that we have achieved together. And I just want to make it clear that that letter should not imply that I did any of these things. Actually, I had an amazing team who did them. I cheerlead them. I put all my effort to bring them money from federal and state sources. But they're an amazing team, and I couldn't be prouder of them. But I hope you'll agree that over the last 12 months, we did a good job as an agency. Like organization across the region, the country, and globally, we experienced our fair share of challenges in the past 12 months. We have overcome many of those obstacles to achieve the successes that we talked about. When I joined Sandag over 2.5 years ago, my mission was simple: make Sandag a world-class organization, reimagine the future of transportation in this region. And I believe we have made significant progress toward this goal in the past 12 months. This year, the board adopted a vision and mission statement, approved the first agency strategic plan that set us to move forward toward our goal of accomplishing a world-class status. The long-term map for success, the strategic plan incorporate investments in our internal infrastructure to improve how we function as an organization. The priorities for Sandag were 5, and let me list them because they're important. Completing the mid-coast this year, the largest infrastructure project in San Diego County, on time and on budget. That project will be completed, will open to the public in November. And Chair Blakespeare and Mayor Sotola Solis, Mayor Gloria, and some others celebrated an amazing opening of this station, of this line. It will be a great addition to San Diego Transit. The second priority was the regional transportation plan. If you recall, we had a state bill that delayed our plan for 2 years to allow us to do work. The 5 big moves, which is the regional transportation plan, is truly reimagine the transportation system. Again, later this year in December, this plan will be adopted, forwarded to the federal and state governments for approval. And that's a major activity for Sandag. The third was the Central Mobility Hub here close to downtown San Diego. We signed 2 MOUs with the United States Navy. We're progressing on the environmental work. Having a Central Mobility Hub for San Diego is, in my view, a must. Connecting to the airport is a must. We're looking at different sites for that, and that work is progressing. Otay Mesa 2, Port of Entry. Just last week, we signed an amazing MOU with Mexico. We believe this project is so critical, and I'm going to talk about this later today with some of you. And finally, the Del Mar Bluff. We identified a significant amount of funding to stabilize it, and we're working toward a long-term solution for the Bluff. So it's been a busy year. It's been an amazing year. And again, I couldn't be prouder of the team we have here. They would make any CEO look good, and they did make me look good, and I'm honored. I also want to thank you, the leaders. I last week had lunch with our last year's chairman, Steve Vass, and yesterday I had dinner with Mayor Vasquez, and the conversation is always geared to what's good for the region, not what's politically good, and I appreciated both conversation. I also, Chair Blakespeare, I told you many times, I'm here because I love the challenge, I love the opportunities, and with your leadership, we're gonna allow San Diegans to achieve their dreams. So thank you very much. I appreciate all the input and the leadership you provided me to be as successful as I am. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Hassan. We appreciate those comments and sharing the highlights. and your vision for where Sandag and the region is going in the years ahead, because these are really big projects that you were describing. I think I'll just mention two items before we go to public comment and then board comment. So the first has to do with compensation. So as part of preparing for this item, I asked the staff to gather some information about the compensation that's paid to other CEOs and executive directors in the state of California by our peer organizations. And the summary confirmed that our executive director continues to be one of the top paid executives in the public sector in California. And Hassan has, in my opinion, performed fantastically, exceeded expectations, and is a fantastic executive director, and we're so thrilled to have him. I believe that maintaining his current salary and compensation is appropriate at this time. And I'll just also mention that board leadership has discussed this compensation, has had this compensation discussion with Hassan several weeks ago, and then also again yesterday. So there's that, and then there's also the matter of his employment contract. So he has a 3-year agreement with Sandag, and that expires on December 3rd. And the contract includes a 120-day notice period should either party wish to terminate the agreement. So if we haven't heard any interest from Hassan in terminating, and I haven't heard any interest from myself or other board members in terminating. So if no action is taken by either Sandag or Hassan by August 3rd, then the contract will automatically renew for another 3-year period, and that's under the same terms and conditions. So I think it's true that all of us would like to see Hassan remain as the executive director and to continue his work for Sandag and for the San Diego region. But of course, if anybody feels differently about that, then you should feel free to speak up and raise your hand and I'll call on you. And just as a reminder, the executive committee here, like what we're doing right now, is our role is to advise the board regarding Hassan's performance in the last 12 months. So then the board meeting, which happens right after this, will make actually the final decision about it. So our advisory decision, if we make one right here at the executive level, which would be to make a recommendation to find his performance to be satisfactory, unsatisfactory, or exceeds expectations, and then to recommend goals and objectives for fiscal year 2022. So then we'll talk about that at 9. So I'm going to go to public comments, but I'll go to board comments first. And I see Mayor Jones has her hand up. So I'll go ahead and call on you first. Go ahead, Mayor Jones.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I would just like to bring up a couple of, one thing in particular, and that is that we did vote on priority corridor projects. And I didn't hear that as one of the priorities moving forward when our executive director had talked about our priorities. And we haven't taken a formal vote on that yet. So I believe that should be something that we need to discuss openly in public. So I just wanted to bring that up. And then I also wanted to mention that it would sure be good to have some team building, I think, from our executive director, having some sort of way to bring us together, because I think there has been no effort in that. And I think as a leader, that's a very important part of our jobs, is bringing all of everyone together in a positive manner, and not there's an awful lot of I don't know how to say it, but bluntly, and that is a lot of very hostile comments from board members to one another. And I feel like that needs to be addressed, and I would really like to see that happen.
Well, thank you for those comments. I think you're absolutely right about the team building, and especially given that we've been virtual for so long and we have a new board and we have a lot of board members, so it's some people don't know each other very well at all. And so I was actually talking with Hassan about that yesterday, about our retreat and having an event before our retreat so that we can do that team building. I think you're right, that's really important. And now that we're getting back to being in person, we can do that. We can plan that right away. So I'm glad you highlighted that. Hassan, do you want to make any comments in light of her comments?
Mayor Jones, thank you for your comments. And the corridors will continue to be a priority. That's what the 5 big moves are. When you adopt the plan in December, this is going to reaffirm that there is 12 corridors consistent with your past actions. If you recall, the same action said move forward with the 5 big moves, prioritize corridors such as the 78, 15. These are still priorities, will continue to be priorities. These are important major corridors in San Diego. And I believe you've seen the presentation. All of these corridors were addressed in the 5 big moves. And you're gonna see when we finalize the plan, they were addressed in such a way that actually make them very effective.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Von Wilbert.
I believe that Mayor Solis may have had her hand up first, though I don't want to cut in line.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I missed that. Yes, Mayor Sotelo Solis, go ahead.
Thank you so much. Thank you, council member. Appreciate that. But it really speaks to we here as a board really see the greater good of our region, you know, as that priority. How we really use our voices, and we do that with and through our executive director and the team that he and all of us have really grown to really appreciate. And we know that they've worked extremely hard over the course of the last, and I've been on the board now going on, this is my 3rd year as the representative, as the mayor for the city of National City. And I've seen, you know, very deliberate efforts to get communication to and through the board to the community in various languages, through various modes, whether it be social media, the actual media, and then our own channels through the municipalities. I've seen that there's been, you know, very purposeful efforts to discuss, you know, some of that dirty laundry or the more challenging, controversial issues, and they've come up out front. And what may seem as, you know, adversarial, it really comes down to, you know, how we as a board, you know, bring out those, again, those challenging topics. And I would agree, I think the executive team has discussed how we can build more and go across partisan lines, because our goal is the region. However, it goes both ways. We really need to have that open heart and open mind to be able to accept, you know, where the region we are moving, and we're moving quickly and moving forward with mass transit and all of these corridors at the forefront. I just wanted to share 2 more points just really quick. Moving forward, for me, with the equity and diversity statement was bold. And again, it speaks to where we as a board and leadership within the organization are looking to move forward and continue to validate and acknowledge, one, the significance of the underrepresented or those who have been historically, you know, left out of, you know, stories and timelines. So for me, that was extremely important. And as we move forward with the big 5 moves, we know that we're talking about budgets that are on time and staff that is committed to working hard and moving our collective visions forward. And I think with that, all of those elements, us as a board are, you know, we can work together and we'll continue to work together again. And it's also to our job to do things offline. But when we do things here on the dais virtually, that is, we continue to move forward with the goals of being on time, under budget when possible, and doing it in the most transparent way. And I think with the executive director of Mr. Grata, we've been able to do that. And I look forward to hearing my colleagues' comments. And I would support, again, as Chair Blakespear mentioned, we have discussed the compensation. We appreciate all the work that Hassan has done, and he has shared he is not seeking that bonus or bump. And I think all of us are faced with that challenge because of COVID-19, and so many people that are still facing those fiscal challenge. It would not be in our, it would not be the best to provide that, but he is also not seeking it. So that makes our decision that much easier. So thank you to Hassan and the team for all of their great work. And I see you back by time. Thank you so much, Chair.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Von Wilpert.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I just wanted to say a big thank you to Hassan for your leadership through these past 3 years. With the city of San Diego, we've watched as you've had very difficult conversations and really moved the needle and steered the vision of our region. And I, for one, know that I'd love to see you here for another 3 years, if not more. And so I very much would support any motion to make sure that you stick around. So thank you very much. And that's all my comments. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Mayor Voss.
Good morning. First
Good
of all,
morning.
go Padres. Important business of the day. Though this discussion is in theory a responsibility of the executive committee. Look, in 60 minutes, we're going to be having this exact same discussion again with the entire board, and the entire board needs to have an opportunity to weigh in. So my suggestion would be that we simply recommend that the board discuss the matter and move on. I'd rather see us get to talking about draft board agendas and get on to the other business of the day, because I think a lot of these comments are going to be repeated. So that's my only suggestion for the morning.
So can I just clarify? So you're suggesting that we not make a recommendation of satisfactory, unsatisfactory, or exceeds?
Exactly.
That we
Exactly.
just-
Let's let the board discuss it.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for your comments. Mayor Vasquez, do you have your hand up?
Yes, I do. I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank our executive director, because he came in at a time where a big shift was taking place, and lots of change was part of the new vision for Sandag. The one thing that I can really appreciate is while we're all going through the process of discovering what Sandag is going to be in the future, the executive director has led the charge in staying focused and intentional and ensuring that funding is available for projects. And while Transnet funding is literally obsolete, I mean, there are millions of dollars that have been secured on behalf of Sandag through the leadership and guidance of the executive director. So I just wanted to take this opportunity to acknowledge that and to thank you for your ability to stay focused and intentional in securing the funding for projects and allowing us to have healthy and sometimes not so healthy, but robust conversations about transportation and where we're going in the future.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Does the clerk have any public comments?
No, Chair, no public comments.
Okay. Well, it's all right with me. I don't see that there's really a huge need to make a recommendation from executive committee. You know, this is the format. It was that things come to executive committee first. But if there's a desire to have this discussion at the board level, which we would do anyway, I don't think there's really a lot lost by just saying that this is a board decision and we'll make it there. So unless there's any, I don't see. Okay, Mayor Sittelis, yeah.
Yeah, and I would agree with you. I think, you know, in the discussion of compromise, you know, and really just recognizing, you know, our role is to preempt those discussions that do happen at the general board meeting. And we do have the opportunity to rehear those comments. So there may be a repetition, but it's also too really important to state it here. And so I will refrain from making the motion to making a recommendation in the vein of compromise, but also to showing that, you know, we will be having a big discussion with the board, and it is that decision, but our role too is to make those recommendations to the board. So Venus Hassan has, I've already shared my thoughts on his job performance. I think we'll be hearing some great comments at the general body. So thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So we will now move to item number 3, which is review of draft board agendas. And I will hand that over to Victoria.
Good morning. So for your Friday, July 23rd Board of Directors meeting, we have the first item, which is public comments, followed by item number 2, which is the Chief Executive Officer's report. On your consent calendar, we have approval of the meeting minutes, followed by item number 4, which is a proposed budget amendment to accept $880,000 from the Department of Defense for a military grant award. Item number 5 is the approval of solicitations and contracts. Item number 6 is the FTA FY 22-24 DBE triennial goals, followed by item number 7, which is the SANDAG 2021 Title VI program update, where we'll be looking to adopt a resolution. Item number 8 is the Policy Advisory Committee actions. We're looking for an approve, followed by the Chief Executive Officer's Delegated Actions report. Item number 10 is meetings and events attended on behalf of SANDAG. This will be presented for information. And in addition to that, we would like to add one item to the consent calendar, which would be accepting $200,000 from the California Energy Commission to prepare a regional medium and heavy duty zero emission vehicle blueprint. So that concludes the consent calendar. Under reports, we have item number 11, which is the Workforce Development Program, where you'll be discussing a community benefits and local hire agreement, followed by item number 12, which is a public hearing on San Diego Forward, the 2021 RTP. That concludes the July 23rd Board of Directors meeting.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the peek into where we're going. Do we have any public comments on that?
No, Chair, no hands from the public.
Okay, so do we have a motion to approve that
Move
draft?
approval.
Second. Carlos Solis.
Okay, let's go ahead and vote.
Thank you very much. For the City of San Diego, Councilmember Von Wilper.
Oh, yes.
Thank you. For the County of San Diego, Supervisor Lawson Reamer.
Aye.
Thank you. For East County, Mayor Vasquez.
Aye.
Thank you. For North County Coastal, Chair Blakespear.
Yes.
Thank you. For North County Inland, Mayor Voss.
Aye.
Thank you. And for South County, Second Vice Chair Sotelo Solis.
Sotelo Solis. Aye.
Thank you. And that does pass unanimously.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have item number 5, our legislative status report, and we are pleased to welcome a very special guest, Peter Pizer. He's our advocate in Washington, D.C., and we're excited to have him here today. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate being here.
And I think we're starting with Hector, and then we'll give you a chance to chat with
Great.
us.
Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Thank you. I will start with the borders report, and conditions are very similar to those that I've been reporting in the last months. Although I want to mention that vaccination has progressed a lot, and about 40% of Mexicans right now are being vaccinated. But in Baja California, our neighbors, this percentage is much higher, as around 80%. In Mexico, people are demanding the vaccines, but unfortunately, has been difficult to get it, but the United States donated over 1 million of vaccines that were dedicated for the border. As I've been reporting, restrictions are still in place and in your land border crossings, and people have been waiting hours to return from Mexico. On the other hand, this month, we are celebrating the first anniversary of the implementation of the new free trade agreement of North America, the USMCA, and Ambassador Catherine Tai, U.S. Trade Representative, visited Mexico and met with her counterparts of Canada and Mexico. Our neighbors were, if you remember, the 4th largest trading partner of the United States before NAFTA, but right now Mexico is the largest trading partner for the US, obviously for California, and certainly for San Diego. And this is very important for our region because the new agreement provides tools to order the flow of trade between the 3 countries, and international trade through our land port of entries have continued to grow, even during the worst of the pandemic. It's been 16 months of this normality at the border, and little by little, we are adapting to a new post-pandemic world where the new global order is marked by the Chinese emergence or dominance in certain markets or certain parts of the globe. But it's forcing us to work closer with our partners. And this is not a strange or a reality far from our San Diego region. Our region, as you know, we are located on the border with Mexico, and we have a strong historic roots that link us with that country. In this context, 2 things are now undeniable. The first one, unfortunately, many in San Diego still think the border doesn't matter to their lives or for their future. And second, it is now evident that among the many communities that we identified in San Diego, you have one very important, a large one that I will say is the transborder community. These are about 85,000 San Diegans that are sleeping every day south of the border. They are allowed to cross the border returning to San Diego because they are considered essential workers or because they are US citizens or residents returning to their country. If they cannot afford a house in San Diego, they can afford it in Tijuana. And if their salaries are below the needed for a standard quality of life in San Diego, it's good for living south of the border. And as I said last month, this community is of the size of National City and Coronado combined. And what is all this about? Because lately the border and the Hispanic community have been expressing their frustration. The border condition has been an additional burden for some, or many in your communities that are experiencing the same health and economic crisis as the rest of our nation, but with an additional family separation by the wall, a localized economic crisis for the lack of their use international customers, and on top of this, a humanitarian crisis in their yard, not speaking of the social and racial equity issues. But great things are also happening. And in this framework and the framework of your transformative vision for our region, last week, our chair and vice chair, Mayor Blakespeare and Mayor Gloria, signed along with Lieutenant Governor Eleni Kounalakis and CalSTA Secretary David Kim and their Mexican counterparts, a historic MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, to memorialize the technical understandings for the future Otay Mesa East, Mesa de Otay 2 port of entry. But more important, I would like to emphasize that the MOU reflects the commitment of the proponents to do everything within the reach to open the new border crossing by the end of 2024. And this is just around the corner. Basically, the MOU describes the innovations that will make of this the port of entry of the century 21. Users' fees will support an innovative financial strategy and will be used as a tool to manage traffic congestion. Also, deployment of intelligent transportation system on both sides of the border will enable predictability on the time needed to cross, offering 20 minutes of wait time to get to the inspection. And an innovative design will include flexible and reversible lanes, among many other features. Yes, the border is reporting louder that is exhausted and frustrated, but your work does not stop in one project, and your teams are working hard to listen and engage with your communities, incorporating comments and suggestions to the corridor studies, working collaboratively with authorities around around our borders and south of the border, and providing language interpretation or speaking in their language to these communities. Later this month, as it has been through the years, your Borders Committee will receive reports on planning efforts and transportation projects on south of the border. And today at your board meeting, you will receive a report showing your partnership with MTS to launch planning efforts for a San Isidro Mobility Hub. With this, Madam Chair, I conclude my report, and I guess I'm passing the screen to Robin.
Thanks, Hector. So I'll go ahead and carry on the binational theme and just share, in addition to the great celebration that we had for the Otay Mesa East Port of Entry MOU signing a couple of weeks ago, we were very pleased to have the Lieutenant Governor of California and the Secretary of Transportation, David Kim, join us here in San Diego for that. But in between, as you all know, a lot of the work usually happens behind the scenes. And so based on the Lieutenant Governor's direction, actually, we are going to start holding regular intra-agency meetings with the Lieutenant Governor's office, the California State Transportation Agency, the Governor's office himself, as well as GoBiz, to talk about how we can all coordinate and work together on advancing the Otay Mesa East Port of Entry project. This is really important because it not only helps to elevate our project in Sacramento, but also use our partners in Sacramento to elevate the project and SANDAG in Washington, D.C., due to the relationships that they all have with our friends over in Washington. So stay tuned on that, but we're really excited to be able to have that partnership and be working directly with the highest officials in Sacramento on this project. As far as bills go, this committee approved several support positions at your last meeting. I'm happy to report out that all of those bills continue to move forward through the legislature. There's about one more week before the legislature goes into summer recess, and then they'll come back for one more month to wrap up the session for 2021. The legislature still is very much working on the state budget, so you've probably been seeing a lot of headlines. As you know, the deadline for the state budget was June 15th, and so by the deadline, the legislature and the governor made sure that they signed something into law, but really it's serving as the framework. Last week, you probably saw headlines that some trailer bills were passed. The governor has not yet signed those as the negotiations continue to be underway, and we're expecting additional trailer bills to come out when the legislature does come back after summer recess. The good news is that so far everything is in our favor. There have a budget of about $267 billion. There's more than $11 billion dedicated to transportation. A lot of the things that we talked about at your last meeting still remain. We're just waiting for the details to be fleshed out. Of that, I know that our chair in particular is very happy about the more than $1 billion that was dedicated for litter removal throughout the state. There's also about $3.7 billion for resiliency efforts. Along those lines, I should mention one of the bills that you took a support position on, SB 1 by Senate Pro Tem Atkins, that has to do with sea level rise. That one has $100 million in grant funding. And previously, that grant funding was only going to be available to local agencies. The senator has now amended the bill per our request to ensure that agencies like SANDAG can be eligible for that funding as well, so we can work in partnership with all of our local jurisdictions to address sea level rise throughout the region. Going back to the budget, there's also almost $3 billion for zero emission vehicle infrastructure. So that's great news for our region as we continue to move forward on that front. And $6 billion for broadband, another priority for our agency. So like I said, we are still very much in talks with the administration and the legislature as they figure out the details of exactly how this funding is going to be distributed. We want to make sure that SANDAG is front and center, as well as our local jurisdictions, in not only being eligible, but competitive for all of these funds. And that's probably actually a great segue to our very special guest today, because everything we're doing in Sacramento is to also make sure that we're positioned well to leverage and maximize all of the infrastructure conversations going on in Washington, D.C. right now. So, you know, we have Hassan, who's our agency cheerleader for all the staff here, but we couldn't ask for a better cheerleader in Washington, D.C. than Peter Pizer. I know a lot of you know him already and have worked with him over the years. Peter has been our biggest cheerleader in Washington, D.C. for 16 years now. And is here joining us today to tell you everything that's going on in DC. Peter, over to you.
Hi, Robin. Thank you. And Madam Chair, members of the Executive Committee, it's great to be with you. I actually am in San Diego, so I'm closer to being with you than I normally am. It's been good to be here the last few days to catch up with members of the SANDAG staff in person. Had the opportunity to see you, Madam Chair, yesterday, and I appreciate that. And it's good to be with you. And it's a very exciting time in Washington, which is an unusual thing to be able to say. Usually when I report to this board and executive committee from time to time, it's usually about gridlock and about the difficulty of moving things forward. But now we have movement on a significant increase in federal investment in transportation infrastructure. So I want to talk a little bit about that and how it impacts on SANDAG's key priorities. As you've seen in the news, the president proposed a major infrastructure package. And after a series of conversations with a bipartisan group of senators, reached an agreement with them to advance a package that will significantly increase federal spending on transportation and other classes of infrastructure. It's really only in the context of the very large $2.2 trillion increase in infrastructure spending proposed by the president originally that a $537 billion increase over 8 years would be viewed by some people as being small or paltry, as some more progressive Democrats have called it. But it is still, this package that's been agreed to is a very significant increase in infrastructure spending. It would spend on public transit about an additional 50% over current levels. It would increase highway spending by about 30% over current levels. And on the rail side, for projects such as Del Mar Bluffs and the realignment of tracks in the Los Angeles corridor and other Los Angeles corridor projects, the spending is 4 times the current level. So the biggest increase there is really in intercity passenger rail, which reflects President Biden's long history as he would call it, Amtrak's #1 customer in his years in the Senate. So that's that package is now being teed up for action in the Senate. We anticipate that the Senate will get it up on the floor and hopefully pass it in July. We have not seen legislative language yet around the outline that was agreed to, but we anticipate that that will be available in the next couple of weeks, and we'll be able to take a closer look at how it divides money to specific programs within those big headings of highways, transit, and rail. At the same time, over on the House side, they've been moving on legislation that is sort of a hybrid between a long-term infrastructure plan and the sort of usual reauthorization of federal surface transportation programs that takes place every 5 years. The House passed a bill 2 weeks ago that would have even more significant increases in transportation spending than those contemplated in the bipartisan plan. The House bill passed with was referred to as bipartisan by the leadership of the House Transportation Committee. It got 2 Republican votes on the floor of the House. So I'm not sure that really qualifies as bipartisan, but it is a very substantial package. It would increase transit spending by about 75%. It would double the spending for the program that has funded Midcoast, and in the future could fund projects like Blue Line modernization and Purple Line here in San Diego, as well as the Central Mobility Hub. It also includes a very large increase in rail funding, more than the infrastructure package that's been agreed to on a bipartisan basis. So that package, which passed in the House, will eventually, I believe, be merged with the broader bipartisan bill, so that when that bill goes through, it will include both these new programs with increases for the various modes, but also will include the baseline authorization of existing programs. I should say that one of the developments this year is that Congress returned to a practice that they had abolished for the last decade or so, involving earmarking of specific projects in the legislation on a project-by-project basis. The San Diego County delegation pulled together in a really impressive way to advance significant projects that are priorities for Sandag in this bill. I think you've already had a report on that from Lori Grover in a previous meeting, but it's important to point out that there is $70 million in this House-passed bill for specific Sandag and San Diego County projects, such as Otay Mesa East, Los Angeles Corridor, Central Mobility Hub, and and the I-15 SR-78 connector. So there's very significant funding here for key projects, and we expect that to stick as this process goes forward. So I think the outlook is good for this to get completed this year. As I'm sure you've seen, the conversation on infrastructure is now tied to the conversation about the American Family Plan that President Biden proposed, which is a plan of social spending for the most part, coupled with tax increases for high earners and for the and for corporations. There was some conversation about tax increases to pay for the infrastructure plan, I should say. And we saw a very interesting turnabout in that this time around, where Republican senators were proposing to increase the gas tax, which had long been something that the Republican side had opposed and the Democratic side had supported. And the strongest opposition to that came from President Biden and the Democrats. And what has shifted for them in this conversation is the view that the gas tax is a regressive tax that actually exacerbates social inequities by creating a situation where everybody pays the same, regardless of their economic status. And so that has eroded the support for gas tax increases on the Democratic side. And it's looking like very little chance we'll see a gas tax increase to pay for infrastructure. And then there's also was discussion on vehicle miles traveled or road usage charges as a way to capture revenue from electric vehicles and hybrids that don't pay the gas tax. That is likely to show up as expanded pilot projects going forward to test how that might work in the future. Again, that will have to be implemented in a way that addresses social equity issues if it's going to be successful to get bipartisan support. So I did want to talk a little bit about how that infrastructure package would get paid for. The American Family Plan that I talked about, the social spending and tax increases, is tied politically to the infrastructure package, if not specifically in the legislative process, particularly because progressive Democrats and the administration want to make sure that both of these things get done and that it's not just infrastructure. That's going to be a point of tension. It is very, controversial on the GOP side, many of the proposals that come from the administration. But it looks to me as if there will be agreement on the Democratic side around a American Family Plan that is slimmed down from what the president proposed, with tax increases, but not as big as those the president proposed. And if that can get 50 Democrats in the Senate, it can move through, and both of these things will then be able to advance, and both packages can be done. So I do believe that will happen sometime this fall. The goal on congressional leadership side is to get that done by September 30th. I think that's an aggressive goal, but it certainly looks like they'll get this done by the end of the year. So for Sandag, given those kinds of increases, this means substantial opportunity to advance the major projects that you're focused on, as well as projects around mobility innovation, around broadband. Those are all going to be key features here, in addition to the sort of traditional investment in major highway, rail, and transit projects. So a really good outlook in Washington, and it's really a pleasure to be able to say that. And with that, I think I'll hand it back. Thanks.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Peter, for that information. Really interesting, and Hector as well. Robin, do you want to say anything else about that?
No, we're all done. We're here for any questions or comments from the committee. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any public comments on this item?
No, Chair, no hands from the public.
Okay. What about executive committee comments? Don't see any hands raised. Okay. So that means our meeting is over. So we have about 10 minutes till our next meeting. So our executive committee meeting is on September 10th, the next one. So please enjoy your dark August, and remember that we will be back in person when we get back together on September 10th. So we were really looking forward to seeing you, and I'll see you at 9. We're adjourned.